Sixers up 2-0 in the series. Most people expected it, but maybe it wasn't aesthetically the way some people may have hoped. Paul Hudrick joins us right now on the Boardwalk on a hotline, our Sixers insider over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Of course, he has all the coverage there along with the team, and he joins us now on 97.3 ESPN. Paul, how you doing?
Doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, and I'm going to start here. I believe last night's game was about the thing that will make the Sixers, if they have a chance to get to the Eastern Conference Finals and win a title, it comes down to one thing we saw last night: defense. This team went nuts. And I know Matisse Thybulle himself had an individually great statistical defensive game, but it seemed like everybody on the court last night made a concerted effort to say, we are not going to let you have hope to win this game tonight. And to me, that is the Sixers formula to making not just winning this series, but making a deep run in this postseason.
100%. And Doc Rivers has made, no qualms about that all season long. He said that that's our identity, is that we're going to be a really good defensive team. Scoring up points to win basically on offense, and we're just going to be a really good defensive team. And they're set up perfectly for that. When you have, easily two of the top 10 defenders in the NBA, and Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, another guy, if he's not there, is pretty close behind him, and Matisse Thybulle. And then a bunch of others, just really solid defenders. When you talk about, Danny Green, George Hill, they're just this is the way they're built. They're built to be a defensive first team all season long. They were right up there. I think they wound up finished second in defensive rating. And you've seen, Josh, the first two games. Maybe early on, Bradley Beal maybe has gotten loose a couple of times. And, I mean, credit to Bradley Beal, he's great, terrific scorer. Was the second leading scorer in the NBA this year. But you've seen in games when they really needed to crank it up, when they've really needed to kind of dig deep and find, really good defensive possessions, they've gotten them. So, it's really encouraging through two games. And to your point, for the playoffs, if they want any chance of, getting, this series, they're obviously on a good path. But if they want to, beat get past the second round, get to the Eastern Conference Finals and beyond, defense is definitely where they're going to hang their hat.
And listen, I know that defense is not always aesthetically pleasing. You're not going to win a fantasy basketball lineup because of defense, right? You're not going to sell as many jerseys because of defense. But you know what? You can't name me a team that won a championship that didn't play defense. So as far as I'm concerned, when Doc Rivers said, when he got introduced to this organization in that empty gym on that awkward press conference on a Zoom, which hopefully we'll be away from that sooner than later because I'm getting so tired of these Zoom post games, he said, we want to be the number one defense in the league. And you know what? The number one defense in the league, to me, is the only thing that is slowing down the Nets, that's going to stop the Bucks, and that's going to make anybody's life in the Western Conference miserable, because realistically, I have no idea who's coming out of the Western Conference. I don't know if the Nets are going to be healthy for the full postseason. And the Bucks, well, flip a coin, good luck.
Yeah, I think the idea of that, you hit a good point where you talk about, the idea that even teams, even like the Warriors, when they were going on the runs, yes, they had, Steph Curry and they had Klay Thompson and they had, at one point Kevin Durant, but those teams defended too. I mean, they also had Draymond Green, who's a former defensive player of the year. And we kind of saw, in those play-in games, how special he can be defensively, and difference maker he can be on that end. And I think people sometimes, Klay Thompson, because of how good of a shooter he is, his defense gets overlooked, but he is an excellent, excellent defender. I mean, defense is a big part of it. Look no further really than the Lakers last year. A big part of the reason they won their championship is that they defended extremely well with LeBron James and Anthony Davis kind of leading the way there. So defense is a huge part of this equation. And we talk about certain players and certain things, and people kind of, with Ben Simmons, I'm sure we're going to talk about it, but people want to focus so much on the offensive end of the floor. But man, you got to acknowledge this guy might win the Defensive Player of the Year, and think of all of the great teams and some of the defenders that they've had in the past, including the Warriors with Draymond, or the Pistons with Ben Wallace back in the day, or even the Bulls with Dennis Rodman. You need those elite defensive type players in order to compete. And I think that is going to help the Sixers, as you mentioned, when they go against the Milwaukee Bucks or the the Brooklyn Nets, whatever happens there. The Brooklyn Nets are going to pose a challenge if it comes to that. Even the Milwaukee Bucks are going to pose a very serious challenge, obviously, if they make it all the way there. So having good defenders, being able to match up against these really good offensive players, yeah, it can't be underestimated.
Paul Hudrick joining us here on the Boardwalk Hotline here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. At Paul Hudrick on Twitter. Our Sixers insider over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Yeah, let's get the Ben Simmons thing out of the way here. So I ran the numbers myself today. So if you combined the points generated off of Ben Simmons' assists with his points scored, Game 1, it's a total of 41 points. Game 2, it's a total of 40 points. So realistically, the outcome of the game, the last time I checked, was to win the game. So if you are producing the same amount of points toward winning a game by a difference of 1 point, can't we just admit that Ben Simmons is contributing to this team winning games? Why does it always have to be Ben Simmons didn't do this or do that? Why isn't it, hey, Ben Simmons accounted for 40 and 41 points of a team that scored 120 points minimum in 2 straight games?
Yeah, it's weird. I didn't quite get it. And that's not to say, I'll start it by saying, like, Ben Simmons isn't above reproach. Like, you can criticize him. He's not perfect. He has flaws. He knows those flaws as well as anybody, because people like to bring it up constantly.
Right.
Him missing 6 free throws in the first game, not good. Very bad, as a matter of fact. It can't happen moving forward. But to say that and not qualify it by recognizing that he had 15 assists and 15 rebounds, something only Wilt Chamberlain was the only other Sixer to ever do that. I think there were only like 8 players in NBA history to do that in a playoff game. So and then it's funny to me because I think the funnier thing is I see some people, after last night is, oh, well, yeah, like this game was so much better. Like this is the kind of Ben Simmons we need to see all the time. It's such a lazy way to look at it, because here's what it is, Josh, and your point is excellent, and the generation of points is what's important here. How many points he's actually generating. In Game 1, Tobias Harris had 37 points. Joel Embiid had 30. With foul trouble, he had 30. Clearly, those two guys were getting great looks. They were getting the looks they wanted, and all season long, those two guys have been the leading scorers of this team. That is what they do. They are the scorers. Ben Simmons was setting it up. So last night, credit to Ben Simmons and credit to Joel Embiid, because Joel Embiid went to Ben Simmons and said, hey, they're going to change their strategy. They're going to try to double me more. I could tell from the way they defended me at the end of Game 1, they're going to try to double me more. So it's going to be on you to score more. So with that, he scored more. It's people are really overcomplicating this. It's not a matter of, oh, Ben Simmons was so much better and he was so much more aggressive. No, it is a playoff series, and teams make adjustments from game to game. Right. The first game, Ben Simmons' best way to impact it was to facilitate and create for Tobias Harris, who was red hot, and for Joel Embiid, who is Joel Embiid. In the second game, because they paid so much attention to Joel Embiid and tried to, cut off some of Tobias Harris's driving lanes, Ben Simmons knew he had to score, and he did that. It's just as simple as that, Just. He does what can best help the team that night. Last night, it happened to be scoring. It's really not any more complicated than that.
No, it's not. And I've asked this question for years of sports fans, and I understand for some people this is a question that nobody wants to hear. For other people, they might appreciate this. But I always say, what's more important? Is it your team winning the game or how an individual player performs? Which is more important? Because once you admit what is more important to you, that'll let you know what you really think of the game you're watching, right? So, is what's more important? Is Ben Simmons scoring points or the Sixers winning? If the Sixers are winning, that's what should matter. I always use this quote. And I know it's an old quote. I know it's 20 years old. I know people are going to roll their eyes because I say it 100 times. It doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning is winning, okay? I don't care if Ben Simmons scores 10 points or 50 points. At the end of the day, of the top 20 players who have the highest points per game in NBA history, 8 of them never won a title. That in and of itself should tell you that scoring and winning are not always synonymous.
100%. And Doc Rivers, he's been kind of stressing that really all season when he talks about Ben Simmons, saying that, he doesn't score because that's not like what we ask him to do. And that's not his strength. That's not the best way to utilize him. The best way to utilize him is to have him create these looks, as I talked about. Create it for your scorers and Ben Simmons, and Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris. Create it for your shooters and Danny Green and Seth Curry. And that's the other thing. Ben Simmons, he doesn't shoot threes flat out, doesn't do it. But what does he do? He generates 3-point looks for Tobias Harris, for Seth Curry, for Danny Green. So, and Doc's overarching point that kind of, coincides with yours is if we score 125 points, I don't care where they come from. I just care that we scored 125 points and that was more points than the other team. So, and his joke was, and it's kind of fair. He's like, if we scored 125 points and Ben Simmons scored 125 of them and Joel Embiid scored none, would you then be mad at Joel Embiid? Like, it just makes no sense. You got to win games. And to your point too about, inch or a mile, there are no style points, especially in the playoffs. Win the game. Win the game however you win the game, because that is literally all that matters, especially now. And they are up 2-0 on the Wizards. Ben Simmons has contributed in a big way to both of those wins. That's all that matters in regards to Ben Simmons right now.
Yeah, because nobody remembers how many chances the Suns had at beating the Bulls in the 93 NBA Finals. All they remember is the Bulls beat them in 6 games. They don't remember the fact that the Suns almost won that game at the end of that game. All people remember is, the Bulls won. So, just like you said, all that matters is the final outcome. Paul Hudrick, Sixers Insider for 97.3 ESPN.com, joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. Paul, I have a question from somebody watching the show. Asked us a little bit earlier. I don't know if you have an answer for it, but Rodney wants to know if we have any update on Seth Curry's injury situation.
We do not. So we were told that, he obviously went to the locker room, came out, had ice on his ankle on the bench. That was the injury. It was ankle soreness. So, no fear that it was, anything broken or anything of that nature. So just soreness in the ankle. He was questionable to return. So I don't know if the game was a little bit closer, might he have come back perhaps, but clearly was not needed. They ran them out of the building. They do practice tomorrow. So hopefully we get a little bit more about his status, whether or not he was able to practice, and a little bit more for his status for game 3. With that said, even if Seth Curry sits for game 3, yeah, they should still win. With all due respect to Seth Curry, who has played well and is a big part of this team. If he is unable to go in game 3 and they have to, for instance, start George Hill, I think they'd be just fine. I think they could still take care of business. But hopefully I can give you guys more clarity on that tomorrow at practice. I believe it's at 1:00 tomorrow. So hopefully more answers there.
Well, that kind of leads me to my next question. You kind of answered part of it, which was who would play instead of Seth Curry. You're saying it's George Hill. So then my other part of the question would it behoove the Sixers just to be like, hey, Seth, you got smashed in the stomach in game 1. You hurt your ankle in game 2. Why don't we just say that game 3 you just take the day off?
Maybe my thing would be personally win game 3, because that's the one there. It's like, all right, if you go up 3-0, that takes the life out of the Wizards. Listen, and not to say that I think that the Wizards would, like I said, I still don't think the Wizards would beat them with George Hill in the starting lineup, but if he's healthy enough to play and he's not risking any further injury and he's helping the team, I would say no. You play him, win game 3, secure that. Once you go up 3-0, maybe then if he's kind of 50-50, maybe then you lean towards resting him for game 4 perhaps. But no, I think you have to go all out for game 3. You have to try to win it. And to me, it's kind of like a little bit of a dangerous way of thinking in the playoffs. I know that they've dominated through 2 games, and it's clear they are a much better basketball team than the Washington Wizards. But I just, when you start messing around with stuff like that, I think it could be dangerous. And I just think you don't want to give them any life. Stomp on their throats now, end this thing as soon as possible.
All right. So now I want to get your perspective on the other two big teams, because I think most people agree, if they're rational people, there's three teams in the Eastern Conference. It's the Sixers, it's the Bucks, it's the Nets. All three of those teams now have 2 games under their belt. So how do you evaluate the other 2 teams in the Eastern Conference at this point in time?
When you look at it, it's kind of, they're all kind of following the same pattern. The first games were all pretty close. Second games, not at all. They really ran the other team out of the building. And I think it's clear right now that they are the top 3 teams. And listen, they were the top 3 teams all season long, and it was for good reason. They're 3 good teams. Of course, the Nets. I mean, they're scary as hell, man. When you have those 3 players and what they've done, and then you have a guy like Joe Harris who's just a knockdown shooter to add to that. They're tough, man. They're going to be a really hard team to beat for anyone. And it's hard to gauge, kind of how good, to me, any of these 3 teams are right now, because I think all 3 of them are in matchups where it seems like they are the better team. I will say that I am impressed with the Milwaukee Bucks because, that's a Milwaukee Heat or a Miami Heat team, excuse me, that gave them a lot of trouble last year in the bubble. And I think, Milwaukee is figuring some things out. I think that they are a better team, and I think they've proved that. You add a guy like a Drew Holiday, who is, to me has been an underrated guy for years and years, with his ability as a two-way player, one of the best two-way guards in the entire league. You add him to this mix with already having Giannis, already having Chris Middleton, and the Bucks are a team you can't sleep on, man. They're good. So I would say that it's hard to know how good all 3 of those teams are right now, but I think with those 2 games, it seems clear to me that they are. They're proving that they were all the top 3 seeds for a reason.
Now, I know we can't say which team is a bigger matchup problem for the Sixers, because I think they both create their own unique set of circumstances. But I would ask you, are either the Nets or the Bucks in a position to deal with the Sixers offensively better? Because I'm very curious about, I feel like the Bucks haven't played that great defense in the last couple of weeks, and the Nets, they claim they can turn the button on and play defense, which I still question. I mean, I know Harden puts in effort. I know Durant's not a bum. Kyrie plays a matador defense. So to me, I gotta have to wonder, do either of those teams have a better chance or are better equipped to deal with the Sixers' offense?
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that the Milwaukee Bucks are a better defensive team. And I would say, too, you throw in the big man situation, having a Brook Lopez. Brook Lopez is better than, the bigs the Nets are going to throw you. They've been starting Blake Griffin at the 5. That's probably not going to end well against Joel Embiid, I wouldn't think. And again, mentioning, Drew Holiday. And I think that's, for the biggest issue for that would be probably Tobias Harris, because what Tobias Harris has done a really good job of in this series and really all season long is finding his mismatches and just abusing them and really killing them. You play the Milwaukee Bucks, he doesn't really have one, because he's either going to get Drew Holiday, or he's going to get Chris Middleton, or he's going to get Giannis. Any of those 3 guys, it's not going to be an easy matchup for him. So I would say from that standpoint, with Tobias Harris being this team's second leading scorer, the Bucks would probably give him a little more trouble. And then, Brook Lopez would give Joel Embiid more trouble than any big the Nets would have. So from that standpoint, yeah, I would say that the Milwaukee Bucks offer a tougher defensive matchup. But at the same time, I would say KD, when KD is healthy and he's playing like we saw when he was with the Warriors, he could play elite level defense when he really turns it on, because he's such a special athlete. He's so smart and he's so long. That he can play elite level defense for the playoffs. I think Harden is a little bit better than what some people give him credit for, because quite frankly, they're during the regular season when he was with the Rockets, he never played defense. But when he turns it on, he is okay. He can be a solid defender. He's pretty strong for his size. And then Kyrie's just he tries more in the playoffs, but not an ideal defender. So I do think the Nets defense, that is the biggest thing I'm looking at with them going forward. Can they turn it on? Like you said, can they flip that switch and become a good defensive team? I don't know. So it's going to be really intriguing as we move forward and those teams match up against each other, kind of to see what wins out. Is it going to be the elite offense or the elite defenses that kind of win out in those matchups?
at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. He is our Sixers insider over at 97.3ESPN.com. Of course, he mentioned the Sixers practice tomorrow, so he'll have an update after practice on the latest with the team. Just follow him at Paul Hudrick on Twitter and check out all of his work at 97.3ESPN.com. And as all guests, he appeared right here on Game Day on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Paul, great stuff today. And from me to you, congratulations on being a father.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that very much. Very kind of you.
I figured I'd do it in the virtual, say hello to you. And
I appreciate it very much, man.
Yeah,
definitely more sincere this way. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I could always send a text message, but then again, sometimes I feel like I'm, it's like when you text really quick. I was having a conversation with someone the other day. I feel like the world we live in today, there's like different tiers in like communication now. I feel like the pandemic has like completely like really confused people's communication. So like, because everyone is like, well, let's do a video call, and it's like, well, one person has an Android, one person has an Apple. Well, then what do you do, right? Okay, do you text or do you DM? Is one better than the other? Do you customize your communication based on the person you're dealing with? Do you demand other people to customize their communication the way you prefer? I feel like there's like way too much ambiguity right now when it comes to communication between people, and no thanks to the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I think you nail it when you talk about like different things for different people, because that's like for sure. 100%. I definitely, depending on the person, I definitely communicate differently, whether it's a text, whether it's like a Slack message or, Twitter message, whatever. It's definitely different things for different people. So I think that is the way it is. And it just gets more confusing as we get more stuff to play with. Now this year, it's obviously Zoom is the thing. So it's like, I sometimes you do wish you opine for simpler times, but alas, here we are.
Yeah, here we are. All right, Paul, appreciate everything. And we'll catch you soon.
Sounds good, man. Thanks.